Chapter 2792. Miao Rongrong's henchmen and the rest looked at each other in dismay. They were feeling apprehensive and didn't give a reply for a long time. Yiqing Luo didn't have much patience as she urged them impolitely. Why? You don't dare to come up with the questions personally? Those few people clenched their teeth as they clenched their fists. All right. Not only us. Anyone present who has doubts can come up with the questions. As long as she can answer it, we believe that she didn't cheat. They didn't believe it. This trash Miao Yi could really answer all the knowledge related to venomous spells. They couldn't ask Miao Yi and the other Miao clansmen. Yiqing Luo's brows rose as her narrow eyes curved as she smiled at Miao Yi. Miao Yi nodded her head calmly, sure. Yiqing Luo's smile deepened as she immediately shifted her gaze back onto those people. Between her brows, she was still smiling. But the feeling she gave off was totally different from when she faced Miao Yi earlier. Miao Rongrong's henchmen and the rest only felt that when that pair of smiling eyes fell onto them, it was as though they were covered with a thick layer of frost. Since you've agreed to this method to prove your innocence then? That also means that you've agreed to the suggestion of severe punishment that I mentioned earlier. Yiqing Luo's lazy voice spoke softly. Miao Rongrong's henchmen and the others' expressions congealed as their expressions turned ugly. They wanted to reject. But on second thoughts, Miao Yi had to accept all the questions from the Miao clansmen who had doubts about her. Under such huge pressure, even if the current sacred maiden stood out, she didn't dare to pat her chest and guarantee that she could answer all the questions 100%. It was even more impossible for Miao Yi. Thinking in this way, the man with the rough voice sneered, "Yes, we agree." Yiqing Luo smiled satisfactorily. "Everyone present, please help to be a witness. As for me, I'll say the ugly words first. If Yi's innocence is proven and you go back on your words, then don't blame me for killing your Miao clansmen." The last three words. Yiqing Luo's bite was extremely heavy. There was a hint of coldness in his tone. The group of people trembled. The arrow was already knocked on the bowstring, and they had no choice but to release it. They stiffened their necks and forcefully endured. Yiqing Luo looked at the other two candidates on the stage. "You guys don't dare to accept the challenge? Why should I agree? I didn't cheat." Miao Zhilian's eyes were still red and she was sobbing as she spoke. "You didn't cheat, so I used this method to prove my innocence." Yiqing Luo said slowly, "So, if you didn't cheat, why are you panicking?" Miao Zhilian shrank back as she had a natural fear towards Yiqing Luo. "I accept the challenge." Miao Xuanhuan, who had been standing in the corner, suddenly walked out. Her beautiful face was filled with elegance. Miao Zhilian's words were stuck in her throat. Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes as she smiled and nodded her head. Miao Xuanhuan was quite smart. Miao Zhilian was filled with grievances and fear. In this uneasy mood, he had no choice but to agree to prove his innocence with Miao Yi and the others. After all, Miao Xuanhuan had accepted the challenge. If she continued to reject it, then she would be bearing the name of cheating. Even if she had 100 mouths, she probably wouldn't be able to explain it clearly. Chapter 2793. You. Yiqing Luo pointed at Miao Xuanhuan. "Express to Yi that you suspect her apologies." You. Yiqing Luo's finger moved and pointed at Miao Zhilian. "Run 3 rounds around the Miao tribe and shout, 'I'm a waste,' at the same time." "Based on what?" Miao Zhilian's eyes turned red as she howled angrily. Yiqing Luo's smile turned chilly as her eyes shot out a chilly glint. "Miss Miao Zhilian, didn't you keep saying that Yi is a waste? Are you afraid that your answer rate is lower than Yi?" Miao Zhilian's face flushed red as the anger in her chest surged. Who's afraid? Good. As long as her answer rate is higher than mine, then I'll run those 3 rounds. She gritted her teeth as her gaze turned sinister as she stared at Miao Yi. If Miao Yi loses, then the one who runs 3 rounds and shouts "I'm a waste" will be her. Yiqing Luo's brows rose as she looked at Miao Yi. Miao Yi didn't hesitate as she spat out a word, "All right." The few Miao tribe elders looked at Yiqing Luo's extremely confident look. Looking at the stage, Miao Yi's calm expression. Their hearts couldn't help but started to beat faster. Were they really so confident that they could answer the questions raised by the tribesmen? That bunch of people were all Miao Rongrong's henchmen. Now that the situation was so tense, they would absolutely not give Miao Yi a chance to make a comeback. The questions raised were definitely tricky and sharp. There was a possibility that even if it was them, they might not be able to answer it. How could these 2 young ladies display such calmness and confidence? It wasn't only the few elders who were curious. The guests who were crowding around were also filled with curiosity. From the barrage of gossips, the guests mostly understood some matters regarding Miao Yi, a young lady who had never come into contact with goo worms and sorcery. Could she really answer the questions raised by the Miao tribesmen regarding the sorcery? The judging elder looked at Yiqing Luo and Miao Yi and once again confirmed that the both of them weren't pretending to be calm. He cleared his throat and was about to speak. Suddenly, another female attendant walked up and handed over a piece of paper. The judging elder's expression changed as he swept his gaze around but didn't see that familiar figure. Since he was at the scene, why did he have to keep hiding? The judging elder criticized in his mind as he followed the requirements on the letter and loudly said, "Due to time constraints, we can only give the people of our tribe a chance to ask 10 questions. Only 10 questions? Miao Rongrong's henchmen were immediately displeased. How is 10 questions enough? There are so many voodoo spells and there are also other people who want to ask questions. Miao Yang, this is to prove that Miss Miao didn't cheat. That's why there's a Q&A session. It's not for you to test Miss Miao." The judging elder's tone darkened as he looked coldly at the leader of the group. "Miss Miao is a candidate for the Holy Maiden. You'd better watch your attitude." The man called Miao Yang was immediately silenced by the elder judge's rebuttal and did not dare to refute. 10 questions it is. As long as Miao Yi couldn't answer a single question, Miao Yi would never be able to wash away her disdain for cheating. Both sides had no objections to this condition. The judging elder presided over this segment and allowed them to start asking questions. After scamming those people who had nothing better to do, Yiqing Luo continued to lie lazily back into Dmo Xian's arms, calmly waiting for the outcome. Chapter 2794. I believe that everyone who works hard for their dreams will have the confidence to do their best. Yiqing Luo's lips curled up as she placed her chin on his chest. Her charming eyes were filled with brilliance. She had never been someone who was willing to be mediocre. Deep in her bones is the direct bloodline of the Miao tribe. Her smile, in between the words, softened by a few degrees. Even if Miao Rongrong does not give her any chance to touch the goo worm, she will also create an opportunity. And she paused and laughed hoarsely. She is the master that the ancient goo king has acknowledged. How could she not be able to do such a simple thing? The big palm on her waist suddenly tightened. The man lowered his head and gently blew a breath of air into her ear. It made Yiqing Luo's petite body tremble. There was a feeling of numbness like an electric shock. The young lady's reaction pleased Dmo Xian. The man gave a low laugh. His voice was deep and languid. "If it was you, for the thing that you are pursuing, can you do it to such an extent?" Yiqing Luo's ears turned red, her cheeks were hot, like a fire burning. Listening to the man's low hoarse voice, exuding a hormonal aura that seduced her all the time. Beside her ear, the man's low laughter became more and more captivating. Yiqing Luo's heart almost rippled to the sky. Her 5 fingers unconsciously curled, not willing herself so easily controlled by the man. She took a deep breath, her hands suddenly wrapped tightly around Dmo Xian's waist. Her little head smashed hard against his chest. Immediately, she raised her head and looked at his eyes seriously. Under the golden mask, those 2 shimmering peach blossom eyes were very deep, with a trace of dark and unknown complex luster. This man, no matter what temperament, that kind of peerless elegance made one's mind ripple. Yiqing Luo's pink lips moved, word by word, clearly enunciated. "After all, I am the woman that the overlord has taken a fancy to. If it is for you, I can do anything." Her voice was very light and very gentle. Between her brows, there was a slight smile. The few people around couldn't help but shiver. One by one, they moved a few places away with an unbearable expression. "Have you ever considered our feelings when you're doing this? My eyes are about to be blinded. You've gone too far." Xiao Jin, Peach, and the others tried to ease the atmosphere as they joked around. However, the lovey-dovey couple remained motionless as they stared at each other. Dmo Xian's deep pupils locked onto her face without blinking. For a long time, his eyes were expressionless as he pushed her away. There wasn't even the slightest bit of joy from the girl's confession. It was as if it couldn't even cause a ripple in his heart. Very cold. The few people who were making a ruckus around them fell silent. Instantly the atmosphere became cold and oppressive. But the Yiqing Luo who was pushed away didn't reveal any sad or unhappy expression. Instead, she calmly tidied up her messy clothes and spontaneously leaned against Dmo Xian. Dmo Xian did not move. He didn't reject her approach. Yiqing Luo didn't move as her vision fell onto Miao Yi who was on the selection stage. Soon the Saintess selection would end. Xian would be able to return to normal. Yiqing Luo quietened down. But Dmo Xian had no way to be quiet. Chapter 2795. The girl didn't continue to tease him. He was not used to it. The girl's words just now. It hit the softest part of his heart. He couldn't control this strange emotion. The only thought in his mind was, push her away. The rejection gave him a strange feeling in his heart. However, the moment he pushed the girl away, there was an extremely uncomfortable feeling in his heart. It was constantly fighting against another emotion that came out of his heart. It made him unable to control himself. What the hell was going on? Why, as long as this girl was by his side, why did he always have this strange emotion? On the selection stage, the 10-question segment was already in full swing. Because the elders of the judging panel only gave them 10 chances to ask questions. Miao Rongrong and the others naturally wouldn't ask questions easily. Instead, they racked their brains to think of the most obscure and difficult questions about Gu. Until now, that group of people had only asked 3 questions. The 3 saintesses answered by rushing to answer. Those 3 questions were about the cultivation of many forbidden Gu, as well as the cultivation of forbidden Gu worms, and the methods to cure them. Miao Xuedan and Miao Zhilian didn't have the chance to answer. Even though they were familiar with all kinds of books about Gu worms and Gu since they were young, they couldn't answer these questions accurately. Because the Miao tribe was the most taboo, everything about Gu. They were absolutely not allowed to touch any forbidden Gu techniques or Gu worms. Just like the forbidden place of the Miao tribe, no one dared to step into it for hundreds of years. Therefore, when Miao Rongrong's party asked questions about Gu worms and so on, the 2 of them were completely dumbfounded. They didn't know. Not to mention Miao Yi. But when the first question came out, Miao Yi's expression didn't change and her answer was flawless. Everyone's expression changed slightly. The second question Miao Yi still answered flawlessly. The way everyone looked at Miao Yi changed. The third question Miao Yi answered calmly again flawlessly. At this moment, not only Miao Rongrong's party was shocked, but the elders of the judging panel were also shocked. 3 questions had been asked. There were only 7 chances left. Miao Rongrong's henchmen were already panicking. Miao Yang's face was ashen. He gritted his teeth and glared at Miao Yi, his voice trembling. No. This is impossible. How do you know so many forbidden Gu techniques and Gu worms of the Miao tribe? Where did you learn it? As he finished speaking, Miao Yang seemed to have found a breakthrough point. His eyes widened abruptly. I know. Did you secretly learn the Miao tribe's forbidden venomous spell? He became a witchcraft master. Like I said, how could a useless person like you have such a thorough understanding of the Miao tribe's Gu poison in such a short period of time? Miao Yang's words caused the expressions of the Miao clansmen to change. They all looked at Miao Yi. He tried to find some clues from Miao Yi. Once the taboo Miao Gu was involved to the Miao tribe, that person was a Gu master. If Miao Yi became a Wu Gu master, then he would have to accept the Miao tribe's punishment of burning him to the heavens. On the selection stage, the girl who was the center of everyone's attention slowly revealed a disdainful smile on her young and pretty face. Her pair of spirited eyes slowly swept across the crowd below the stage. Finally, it landed on Miao Yang. Chapter 2796. Senior Miao Yang is slandering me for cheating, and now he's slandering me as a witchcraft master? The girl was still laughing. But in her laughter there were other emotions mixed in. Clearly the girl was smiling. However, as they watched, they felt a sense of heartache. They felt that the girl in front of them was just forcing herself to smile and remain calm in the face of so many doubts. The Miao tribesmen's hearts softened. Thinking of how Miao Yang and the rest had determined that Miao Yi had cheated, and all sorts of accusations. The Miao tribesmen were filled with guilt. That's right, they had slandered Miao Yi for cheating. Now they were slandering Miao Yi for being a witchcraft master? A girl who was not even 15 was slandered for cheating in the Saintess selection. It was equivalent to ruining the girl's life. Now they were saying that the girl was a witchcraft master. Were they planning to use their anger to burn the girl as a witchcraft master and sacrifice her to heaven? It was too vicious. The Miao tribesmen were very clear how much damage these 2 slander could cause to a person or even a family. Miao Yang and the rest were obviously determined to kill Miao Yi. Indeed, since young, because of my so-called sister, I did not have the chance to come into contact with Miao Gu. Miao Yi enunciated each word slowly. Have you ever thought about why she is so wary of me? Miao Yi looked at the Miao tribesman, her lips curling into a self-deprecating smile. Because Miao Rongrong is afraid of my talent towards Miao Gu, she laughed softly. Her laughter was filled with coldness. As long as I come into contact with Miao Gu, no matter what kind of Gu technique it is, I can easily remember it in my mind, and also the method to cure it. Miao Yi's words were like a sudden clap of thunder, striking the Miao clansmen until they were tender on the inside and crispy on the outside. The elders of the Miao tribe stood up in disbelief and looked at Miao Yi. Miao Gu prodigy? Miao Yi was actually a rare Miao Gu prodigy? With such a prodigy, Miao Yi Xiong was actually buried. Miao Yang was clearly stunned by Miao Yi's words. He roared hysterically, "Impossible! Why, you're lying. You want to mold yourself into a Miao Gu genius so that the elders will be biased towards you, right?" Miao Yi was very calm in the face of Miao Yang's hoarse screams. She smiled and didn't respond to Miao Yang's words. The Miao clansmen and elders naturally chose to believe in Miao Yi. Miao Yi definitely did not have the guts to fake Miao Gu's innate talent in front of everyone. After all, it would only take a few days of observation to determine whether a Miao Gu was a genius or not. Puchi, a chuckle leisurely rippled over the square. It also suppressed Miao Yang's hoarse screams. Everyone turned to the source of the voice. The red-clothed girl in the first row of the guest seats giggled and said, "Aren't you going to ask a question to prove your innocence? What's the point of talking about other meaningless things?" Yiqing Luo indifferently raised her brows as her long and narrow eyes were filled with impatience. "Miao Gongzi has been slandering Yi time and time again. Is it because you feel that the Miao tribesmen are all fools, the elders are all fools, and the surrounding crowd are all fools? That you can incite as you wish?" Her tone was very light and gentle, without the slightest fluctuation of emotions. Miao Yang and the others' faces immediately turned black. Chapter 2797. Those who originally had suspicions towards Miao Yi didn't dare to reveal it at this moment. If they really suspected Miao Yi, wouldn't that be admitting that they were fools who could be easily incited? "Master Miao, don't waste everyone's time." Yiqing Luo's expression seemed to be impatient. Following that, she leaned her body towards the silent man beside her. That coquettish posture, matched with that devastatingly beautiful face. It really had a sense of a femme fatale, a femme fatale. This scene was indeed beautiful. But no one dared to admire it. Especially when they heard the impatience in Yiqing Luo's tone. They felt apprehensive in their hearts. There are still 7 more questions. "Master Miao, looking at your attitude, I feel that even if you finish all 10 questions you will not believe Yi. Is there a need to continue with these questions?" Yiqing Luo's brows rose as her faint gaze swept towards Miao Yang. "Elder has already listed out the rules, 10 questions it is." Miao Yang wouldn't give up this chance. Only 3 questions had been answered so far. For the remaining questions, as long as Miao Yi didn't manage to answer any question or didn't answer it, then no matter if it was cheating or Miao Yi's self-bestowed title of Miao Gu Genius, it would all be crushed. Yiqing Luo scoffed lightly. She had seen shameless people but never to such a shameless person. Right from the start he was the one who was pestering endlessly. Now he actually pushed the responsibility of the questioning round to Elder Miao? Yiqing Luo laughed coldly as she raised her volume. "Then continue asking. After the 10 questions are over, I believe the elders will have an idea whether our Yi is really a Miao Gu genius or not, and whether she needs to cheat to pass the Sacred Maiden's selection checkpoint." Yiqing Luo spoke. Even if Miao Yang and the rest wanted to continue using other ways to slander Miao Yi, to disrupt Miao Yi's rhythm, at this moment they couldn't continue. As for the others, they wouldn't be able to incite them so easily. Another 2 questions which they racked their brains to come up with. Once again Miao Yi had answered them flawlessly. Even those answers Miao Yang and the rest didn't know. But looking at the shocked, satisfied and amazed expressions on the faces of the elders, he knew that Miao Yi must have gotten it right. At this moment, it was not only Miao Yang and the others who were feeling anxious. At this moment, Miao Zhilian was trembling in fear. Because of Miao Gu's talent, Miao Zhilian had never suffered any grievances since she was young. Now, in front of everyone, her dignity was being trampled on by a piece of trash that she had always looked down on. After losing the quiz contest, Yi Xuanxi would become the laughing stock of the Miao people. No, absolutely not. She would never run 3 laps around the Miao tribe. He would never say that she was useless. Miao Zhilian gripped her sleeves tightly as she looked at Miao Yang and the others anxiously. As long as she could answer the remaining 5 questions, she might not necessarily lose. However, when Miao Zhilian's gaze fell on Miao Yang, but when he met Miao Yang's eyes, he gave him a suggestive look. Miao Zhilian's beautiful eyes widened as her body tensed up. Miao Yang's eyes flickered as he mouthed the message silently. I'll ask a simple question. Answer it immediately. Miao Zhilian's eyes trembled as she nodded her head continuously. This was the answering mode. As long as she answered first, Miao Yi would lose the right to answer the next question. Chapter 2798. But the two of them thought that they were infallible as they secretly exchanged glances. But it fell into Yi Qing Luo's eyes completely. She squinted her eyes as she realized something and was about to get up to stop their conspiracy. But her body had yet to move. A large palm suddenly clasped her slender waist tightly. He held her firmly in his arms. Yi Qing Luo's nose was filled with the man's sandalwood scent. She frowned as she raised her head and looked at the man's smooth and beautiful chin. She pursed her thin lips, but the next moment, her lips curled as she smiled and said, "Overlord, you can't bear for me to leave?" Originally, Yi Qing Luo thought that after she said this sentence, the pampered and arrogant Dmo Xian would definitely let go and use his deep eyes to look at her fixedly. Then he spat out a word, "Ha." But Dmo Xian didn't let go. Indeed, he spat out a word. But that word wasn't ha, but n. He softly and slowly replied with an n, and didn't continue to speak. This n made Yi Qing Luo's petite body suddenly trembled. Her eyes suddenly widened as she propped herself up and met his gaze. Really? He actually replied with an n? Admitted that he couldn't leave her? When did this man become so honest? Then, my next question. Suddenly Miao Yang's voice was heard from the crowd. Yi Qing Luo was stunned as she immediately shook off the seduction in her mind. I'm not leaving. After settling this matter, I'll be back immediately. She struggled as both her hands held onto Dmo Xian's chest and was about to climb up. But, the next moment, her two hands were tightly held by Dmo Xian. Following that, the force on his waist increased in strength. Yi Qing Luo almost fell into Dmo Xian's arms. Dmo Xian. Yi Qing Luo's chin knocked against his chest as she frowned in pain. Stop fooling around. Dmo Xian squinted his peach blossom eyes. His eyes were deep and dark. Hearing Yi Qing Luo calling him by his full name. Hearing Yi Qing Luo throwing a tantrum at him. His mood was inexplicably joyful. It was as if he was able to stir up more of the girl's emotions, and he felt extremely satisfied. The girl in his arms began to struggle again. Her soft little hands moved up and down his body through his robe. The softness made his lower abdomen a little tight. Dmo Xian. Yi Qing Luo felt the changes on his body and her cheeks flushed red as she gritted her teeth and howled out his name once again. Even if he had forgotten her, this man was still as beastly as before. Dmo Xian lowered his head and his scorching breath sprayed onto her neck as he gave a low laugh. Isn't it said that she's not willing to be a mediocre person? So why is there a need to be like old maid, protecting her in every aspect? You helped her get out of trouble this time, then, what about the next time, the time after that? Dmo Xian's words were extremely cold. But it was indeed reasonable. Yi Qing Luo was speechless for a moment. The man's temperature was still rising. His breath was so hot that her skin felt like it was being brushed by flames. Her delicate body trembled. At the same time, Miao Yang had already asked the next question and was even gesturing to Miao Zhilian at the same time. What's the best food to feed the goo worm? Miao Zhilian's eyes shone as she speedily stretched out her hand to snatch the handkerchief on the table. Whoever snatched the handkerchief first would be able to answer. But the moment Miao Zhilian's hand touched the handkerchief. Chapter 2799. The blood essence of the person who breeds the goo. The girl's voice was clear as it fell into everyone's ears clearly. This was the answer to this question. Miao Zhilian's outstretched hand froze in midair. Aya? The girl patted her head in annoyance as she looked at Miao Zhilian apologetically. Sorry, I've consecutively answered so many questions that I've formed a habit and thought that you guys couldn't answer, so I answered on my own. After the young lady's words were spoken, the guests couldn't help but burst out laughing. Miao Zhilian's face turned green and white. The humiliation and resentment and shame made her hate Miao Yi even more. She retracted her hand, which was about to touch the handkerchief, as she gritted her teeth and stared at Miao Yi. Seeing this scene, Yi Qing Luo also stopped struggling as a sliver of smile appeared in her eyes. She had indeed grown up. She knew how to use the first answer method to ruin the cooperation between Miao Zhilian and Miao Yang. Even if this question was answered by Miao Yi without snatching the handkerchief, it wouldn't be scored. But similarly, Miao Zhilian's question had also missed the opportunity. Miao Yi was considered to have lost this question's score. She was still far ahead. After all, it wasn't that she couldn't answer this question, It was just that she forgot to snatch the handkerchief. This little sister of yours is rather smart. Dmo Xian's chin was placed on Yiqing Luo's neck as his deep hoarse voice carried a bewitching magnetism. Yiqing Luo's body softened as a complacent smile hung on her face. Of course. Not struggling anymore? Dmo Xian raised his brows as he sneered. No, Overlord can't bear to part with me, why would I struggle? Yiqing Luo giggled as she snuggled into Dmo Xian's arms. Her hands were about to wrap around Dmo Xian's waist. The man's large palm directly grabbed onto her shoulders. Following that, he exerted force. Yiqing Luo's body was lifted away from his body. Dmo Xian resumed his aloof abstinence. Yiqing Luo? Did he need to be so heartless? The overlord who admitted that he couldn't bear to part with her just now might be a lie. Dmo Xian ignored the young lady's blazing gaze as he calmly looked ahead. In the next instant, a furry little thing crashed into his arms. The girl's entire body seemed to be glued to his. She hugged his waist tightly with both hands and muttered, "You don't want to recognize me just because you put on your pants? No way." Dmo Xian, the little head in his arms was still arching incessantly. The glint in Dmo Xian's eyes softened a little. The corners of his mouth curled up into a smile that even he himself didn't notice. After a while, his thin lips moved slightly. His voice was husky and sexy. "Put on pants? Seems. This lord hasn't taken off my pants with you yet, right?" Yiqing Luo expressed that the noble and elegant overlord need not reply to this sentence. After Miao Yi snatched to answer that simple question, she looked at the judging elder guiltily. "I really didn't do it on purpose. May I ask all the elders, how should this question be counted?" The judging elder was also dumbfounded by this scene. Hearing Miao Yi's question, he was stunned for a moment before he coughed and continued, "This question, no one will be counted, continue to the next question." Chapter 2800. Rules? The judging elder was obviously angered as well. He sneered, "Why don't you tell me what the rules are?" Miao Yang opened his mouth and wanted to refute, but when the words reached his mouth, he could not say anything. Indeed, from the start there was no rule. This was just to prove that Miao Yi did not cheat, and added a question segment. There was no written rule that one must snatch the handkerchief to answer. There was no written rule that if one did not answer according to the rules, he would lose. Miao Yang's expression froze for a moment. In the end, he could only bitterly clench his fists and hang his head, unable to refute. The judging elder snorted, "This is the Saintess selection ceremony. If you have any other thoughts, don't put them on the Saintess candidate, otherwise, even if the Saintess does not care, this elder will represent the Saintess to punish the tribesmen who sabotaged the selection." The warning of the judging elder was equivalent to the warning of the other elders. Miao Yang's expression was ugly and did not dare to raise his head. Now they had lost Miao Rongrong's protection. In this Miao tribe there was no place for them to stand. If they offended the Miao elders, if the final result was death, it would be a relief for them. What they were afraid of was that it would be more painful than death. If there are no objections, continue the questioning. Don't waste the tribesmen's and guests' time. The judging elder coldly glanced at Miao Yang and the rest, his tone full of impatience. There were 4 more questioning opportunities. All 6 questions were answered by Miao Yi alone. Even if one of the questions was not scored, Miao Yi could be considered to have answered 5 questions properly. Compared to the other 2, the Saintess candidate who did not answer a single question, Miao Yi was already far ahead. He was 100% sure of Miao Yi's talent in Miaogu. A Miaogu genius did not need any cheating methods. The judging elder's heart was filled with Miao Yi, this Miaogu genius. There was no other existence in his eyes. Miao Yang and the others couldn't think of a more obscure Gu technique at this moment. Their expressions were extremely ugly. Their gazes suddenly swept across the Miao tribesmen. Miao Yang clenched his fists, raising his voice. "Since Miao Yi said that she is a Miaogu genius, there is no point in answering our questions. Why don't we let the other clansmen personally witness how much of a genius you are?" The Miao tribesmen immediately became silent. To be honest, they really wanted to personally verify the truth of Miao Yi's words. If Miao Yi was really a Miaogu genius, in that case the holy maiden of this generation would definitely be her. Could the Miao tribe be stable and continue to flourish? It all depended on whether the Saintess had chosen well enough. Therefore, if Miao Yi was truly a Miaogu genius, they were willing to submit in body and mind. However, the Miao tribesmen did not immediately express their thoughts. Instead, they turned their gazes towards the 2 judging elders on the selection stage. Then the judging elder nodded. The Miao tribesmen finally moved. The group of people gathered together and discussed for the time it took an incense stick to burn. Finally, a representative of the tribe raised a question. This question did not point towards the direction of witchcraft. But as soon as it was brought up, even the elders of the Miao tribe might not understand, much less some of the tribe members. Not to mention Miao Xuadan and Miao Zhilian. Chapter 2801. Miao Yang saw this and was overjoyed. As expected, letting the Miao tribesmen ask the question was the right choice. He could not help but laugh loudly. Miao Yi, didn't you say you are a Miao Gu genius? Why, you can't answer the Miao tribesman's question. Ha! If you don't have the ability, don't make empty promises. Miao Yang and the others burst into laughter. The group was laughing. The Miao tribesman's expressions were not good. He felt even more apprehensive in his heart. The questions they posed were indeed too tricky. Because even they themselves did not know what the answer was. It could be said that the question they asked was an unsolved riddle of the Miao tribe for hundreds of years. Even if Miao Yi was a Miao Gu genius, to a riddle that could not be solved for hundreds of years, Miao Yi would not be able to answer it. The tribesman's representative heard Miao Yang and the rest's unbridled laughter, and felt increasingly upset. After a long while, the Zhou people's representative decided to change the question to the judging elder. The tribesman's representative took a step forward and was about to speak. Suddenly, the woman who had been silent all this while took a step forward. She moved. The entire place was silent. The Zhou people's representative's movements also froze. Hundreds of pairs of eyes looked at the girl. The girl slowly stretched out her hand and took the handkerchief. The judging elder stood up excitedly. Many tribesmen stared with wide eyes in disbelief. Miao Yang and the rest's laughter also stopped at this moment. Even the surrounding guests did not understand the Miao tribe's question, and could not understand what the saintess meant to the Miao tribe. She was just a passerby and could not help but hold their breaths. Miao Yi was to answer this question? She could really answer it? Under everyone's different gazes, Miao Yi held the handkerchief, her beautiful eyes calm as she slowly said, I have only seen this gu in ancient books. If I am wrong, I hope the elders can forgive me. The other elders could not help but tremble in excitement. The judging elder immediately shook his head. No matter, say it. What do you mean no matter? If she's wrong, that means she cheated her way to the top. Miao Yang said angrily. The judging elder's white eyebrows furrowed as he sneered and shot a glance in the direction of the square's periphery. A group of Miao tribe guards rushed over. 2 guards, one on the left and one on the right, restrained Miao Yang. Miao Yang did not even have the time to resist before he was pinned to his seat by the guards. The dozen or so henchmen around him all sat stiffly on the soft cushions, not daring to move. Let me go. What right do you have to capture me? Let me go. Miao Yang struggled with all his might. His facial features were twisted as he roared ferociously. The judging elder sneered, just based on the fact that you have repeatedly disrupted the saintess selection ceremony, this elder has the right to punish you for your offense. Miao Yang bared his teeth in anger. I refuse to accept this. I'm just raising my suspicions as a citizen. How did I disrupt the saintess ceremony? Bet on his mouth. The judging elder's cold eyes swept across. The guard took out a ball of cloth from somewhere and stuffed it into Miao Yang's mouth. Suddenly the world became quiet. Chapter 2802. The judging elder's action was giving Miao Yi enough face. It was also indirectly acknowledging Miao Yi's identity. That was acknowledging that Miao Yi was a Gu Miao genius. With the support of the judging elder, Miao Yang's group was going to suffer. On the selection platform, the girl who was the center of attention looked at the judging elder calmly. Her red lips curled into a sweet smile. Then, word by word, he unhurriedly said the answer to that question. Miao Yi's explanation was simple and concise. After she analyzed this Gu worm that was an unsolved mystery, then she guessed several solutions to the Gu worm. Finally, Miao Yi finished her explanation. The entire place was silent. The tribesmen looked at Miao Yi, their eyes filled with shock. They sucked in a cold breath in disbelief. They could not believe that Miao Yi knew this Gu worm like the back of her hand. Clap, clap, clap. Suddenly, at the judging elder's seat, the elders clapped. The 2 judging elders rushed to Miao Yi excitedly. Well said. What Miss Miao said was too well said. Your answer can be said to be perfect. Not only the judging elders were excited. Even the other Miao tribe elders who were watching from the side could not suppress their excitement and also started to applaud. Miao Yi's answer was very detailed. And those solutions to the goo worm could be tried. She could clearly solve the goo worm that the Miao tribe had been unable to solve for hundreds of years, and she could even propose a solution. This was not something that could be answered simply by reading the records of the ancient books. Miao Yi's answer gave them the feeling that she had personally nurtured this goo worm. Miao Yi continued to smile calmly. However, if one were to look closely, one could also see the excitement and joy in her eyes gradually spreading. That was the smile of finally seeing the moon. That was the smile of finally getting recognition. That was the smile of finally being able to stand in public and talk about goo worms. That was finally. All the hard work was really worth it. Miao Yi's heart could not stop trembling. The next question. The judging elder and the other elders did not give Miao Yang and the tribesmen a chance to ask questions. Such a rare opportunity. Of course they had to bring out all the problems that the Miao tribe had been researching for decades, even centuries, but were unable to solve. Miao Yi did not disappoint them. No matter what the question was, she answered all of them with ease. Moreover, every answer was very detailed. The few elders of the Miao tribe were almost boiling, about to explode. Write down every question. Miao Yang's face paled. At the end of the 9th question, Miao Yang was almost paralyzed in the grip of the guards, his face as ashen as a sheet. Who would have thought? Originally, he wanted to stop Miao Yi from becoming the future holy maiden. Miao Yi was reduced to a cheater who was ridiculed by the Miao clansmen. But this action had completely helped Miao Yi. As a result, all the clansmen were sincerely convinced of Miao Yi's strength. Instead, it made Miao Yi's position in the Miao tribe more stable. The 10th question, the last question. The judging elder exchanged glances with the other elders excitedly. For the last question, we must come up with the most difficult one. Yes. Hurry up and think about it. The elders immediately echoed. Chapter 2803. After discussing for about half a cup of tea's time, one of the judges raised his head confidently as he looked at Miao Yi with a beaming smile. Eldest young Miss Miao, the last question. You have to think carefully before you answer. This elder will start now. Wait a minute. Suddenly, a clear voice came from afar. That voice was a deep female voice which was extremely dignified. The judge's voice suddenly stopped. Following that, he swiftly raised his right hand and pressed it on his left shoulder as he bent down towards the direction of the voice. A few of the elders whose eyes were still shining immediately hid their emotions and bowed in the direction of the voice. Not only that, the Miao tribesmen were completely silent as their expressions were filled with respect. One by one they plopped onto the ground as they knelt down. Miao Jilian and Miao Shuedan both knelt down as well. Miao Yi was stunned as she hadn't reacted in time. The judge next to her tugged Miao Yi fiercely. Miao Yi staggered as she knelt onto the ground. At the stairs of the selection platform, 2 figures walked up the platform with steady footsteps. The one walking in front was a lady dressed in simple Miao tribesman attire. She was around 30 years old and looked gentle like water. But the imposing manner around her was dignified and noble. It made one look at her and immediately lowered their eyes, not daring to look at her again. Yiqing Luo also noticed it. This lady's dressing looked simple. However, every ornament on the woman's body was exquisitely carved and extremely luxurious. Behind the lady was a white-haired old man in a white robe. Yiqing Luo almost recognized the lady's identity at first glance. Sacred Lady. Miao tribesman's current Sacred Lady. As expected, all the Miao tribesmen greeted in unison. Greetings, Sacred Lady. Miao Ji raised her hand. Sacred Lady selection ceremony, no need to be so courteous. Saying that, Miao Ji directly found an empty seat on the selection stage and sat down. The judge elder eagerly stepped forward and said, Lady Saintess has attached great importance to this Saintess selection. There is indeed a very outstanding candidate for the Saintess selection. I'll bring her over for Sacred Lady to take a look. No need. Miao Ji waved her hand and said, I saw and heard everything that happened here clearly. After she finished speaking, she lifted her eyes and looked straight at Miao Yi. Miao Yi had just stood up from the ground when she felt Miao Ji's gaze on her. She looked up and met Miao Ji's deep, probing eyes. She was startled and there seemed to be some emotions surging in her eyes. But she restrained herself. She pursed her lips tightly and did not speak. After a while Miao Ji stared at Miao Yi and said lightly, There's one last question. I'll ask it. Do you have any objections? When he asked the question he felt a chill run down his spine. The elders were all stunned. Miao Ji was the holy maiden of the Miao tribe. His authority was above the Miao tribe leader. She had a request. The Miao people must obey unconditionally. However, Miao Ji had actually asked for a candidate's opinion. And he even called himself me? What was the relationship between Miao Ji and this candidate? The clansmen were full of questions. However, the two people who were being guessed only stared at each other and did not speak for a long time. Miao Yi did not speak. Miao Ji didn't rush him. Until, after a long time later, everyone felt that their breaths were suffocating. Chapter 2804. Miao Ji's expression was cold and calm. Suddenly her red lips curved. That faint smile hid a deeper meaning that no one could understand. She opened her red lips and asked, "My question is, how to successfully contract the ancient Gu king?" This question caused an uproar in the surroundings. The sound of people sucking in a breath of cold air could be heard one after another. Contract the ancient Gu king? The ancient Gu king was the treasure of the Miao tribe. The holy maiden of the Miao tribe was chosen by the ancient Gu king. It could be said that even if she passed the selection and made it to the end, if she could not get the approval of the ancient Gu king, the holy maiden candidate would be disqualified. The holy maiden said, "Contract the ancient Gu king?" Did the holy maiden want to contract the ancient Gu king? How could the treasure of the Miao tribe be easily contracted by a Gu master? Even if she was the holy maiden approved by the ancient Gu king, she could not contract the ancient Gu king. This question caused a lot of discussion among the crowd. Miao Yang, who was being held by the Miao tribe guards, had a crazy smile on his face. His mouth was gagged so he could only let out muffled laughter. It sounded extremely strange. She was indeed the holy maiden. Just one question and Miao Yi was defeated. So what if Miao Yi was the genius of the Miao tribe? Looking at the entire Miao tribe, who had the ability and who dared to think of contracting the ancient Gu king? How could Miao Yi answer? It seemed that the holy maiden did not like Miao Yi, but it was true. Which woman would like a woman who was better than her? Miao Yi's existence had greatly affected the holy maiden's status. Miao Yang was full of joy and could not wait to see Miao Yi's defeat. As expected, when the girl on the selection stage heard Miao Ji's question, her face instantly turned pale. Miao Yi's heart trembled violently. She looked at Miao Ji in shock. What was the real meaning of Miao Ji's question? It was just a simple question. Or, did she know that she had signed a contract with the ancient Gu king so she came to test her? However, no matter how Miao Yi looked at Miao Ji's expression was very calm, giving off a sense of distance that prevented strangers from approaching. After all, Miao Yi's cultivation was still too shallow. She really could not understand Miao Ji's meaning. She tried hard to calm her mind and calm her tone and breathing. What is the meaning of the holy maiden's question? Just answer me. Miao Ji's smile was still as noble and distant as ever. Miao Yi pursed her pink lips and stared at her for several breaths of time. Then she snorted and sneered. The sneer was very light, but Miao Ji heard it clearly. Miao Ji's expression changed slightly, but she soon regained her composure. The girl's indifferent voice had already reached his ears. As everyone knows, the ancient king of venomous worms is the treasure of the Miao tribe. No one in the world can tame the ancient king of venomous worms. Saintis asked me this question. Could it be that you have some inappropriate thoughts about the ancient Gu king? Miao Yi. The judging elder standing beside Miao Ji had never imagined that Miao Yi would say something so audacious. Was he provoking the saintess? Was she tired of living? The judges were so scared that cold sweat broke out on their foreheads. Chapter 2805. Miao Ji raised her hand. The judging elder's words were stuck in his throat as he didn't dare to continue. Miao Ji's emotions were indifferent and no one could tell what she was feeling. Her brows were very calm. What she means I am very clear. The judging elder shuddered. Did Sacred Maiden develop a feeling of disgust towards Miao Yi? He opened his mouth wanting to plead for Miao Yi. But when he met Miao Ji's deep and tranquil beautiful eyes, he couldn't say anything. Not only the judging elder was panicking. The other elders were also panicking. Miao tribe finally had such a talented Gu master. Without any special training, she was already so powerful to such an extent. If she was properly trained in time, Miao Yi would definitely become the #1 Gu master in Miao tribe. An existence that surpassed countless elders and even Sacred Maiden. But the current Miao Yi was just relying on her Miao tribe leader's direct bloodline. If Sacred Maiden wanted Miao Yi's life, it was simply a piece of cake. They couldn't bear to lose such a Miao Gu genius. But they didn't dare to offend Sacred Maiden. Just as the elders were feeling apprehensive, deliberating over their words and wanted to plead for Miao Yi. Not only did Miao Yi not show any signs of fear, she revealed a totally different arrogance as she sneered and continued to provoke. Then, sacred maiden, what do you think I mean? Miao Yi. The judging elder was so angry that he gritted his teeth, showing a look of exasperation. Shut up. Do you know who the person in front of you is? Miao Yi scoffed, the coldness in her eyes spread throughout her entire body. She stared at Miao Ji, whose beautiful eyes were calm from the start, as the waves in her eyes surged wantonly. Miao Yi's expression was seen clearly by Yiqing Luo, who was seated. She squinted her eyes and raised her brows. Yi and Sacred Maiden are old acquaintances? Furthermore, there are grudges. A man's deep voice floated from above. Getting the man's response, Yiqing Luo's eyes curved as she immediately raised her head. Her eyes were almost glued to Dmo Xian's revealed lower jaw. Fair skin, smooth lines. His rosy lips seemed to be seducing her. In front of the beauty, Yiqing Luo's eyes were dyed with a gorgeous color. Dear Overlord, do you know about their feud? So what if I know? So what if I don't? Dmo Xian lowered his eyes and looked at the young lady in his arms, who was giggling like a cat that had stolen a fish. His gaze unconsciously turned gentle. Yiqing Luo's charming eyes curved even more. If you know, can I bribe my dear Overlord a little to secretly tell me some inside information? What bribe? Dmo Xian's eyes flickered with a brilliant light. Yiqing Luo raised her slender fingers and tapped on her pink lips. A kiss from a beauty, do you accept this bribe? Dmo Xian's eyes darkened as his thin lips curled up into a faint smile. Are you trying to bribe me, or are you trying to kiss me in the name of bribing me? Both. Yiqing Luo smiled like a flower as she hooked one arm around Dmo Xian's neck. So, what do you think of Overlord? The girl's exquisite face was reflected in front of him. Dmo Xian felt his throat tightening as he controlled the urge to lower his head and kiss her. After that, he squinted his eyes in a sultry manner, not saying a word. Yiqing Luo understood what he meant. She slowly propped herself up and planted her pink lips on his. Chapter 2806. Yiqing Luo pulled the distance between the two of them and raised her blushing face. Bribing is done, my dear Overlord, isn't it time to reveal some gossip? Dmo Xian's brows, which were hidden under the mask, rose as his thin lips curled up and his voice was indifferent. What gossip? I don't know. Yiqing Luo was furious. You didn't know? He didn't know, put on an unfathomable look and still accepted her kiss? This was a fake kiss, right? Damn it, had she been tricked by Dmo Xian? Yiqing Luo expressed that the current Dmo Xian's tricks were too deep and she couldn't win him. Yiqing Luo gritted her teeth. Whereas Dmo Xian was languid and satisfied. Yiqing Luo's gaze shifted to the man's peerless face. Between her lips, there was still the man's elegant sandalwood scent. Decisively, Yiqing Luo kept away the unhappiness of being tricked and raised her eyes as her pink lips curled into an alluring arc as her little body leaned into Dmo Xian's arms. Don't know then don't know, anyway it's not a loss to bribe the Overlord for a kiss. On the selection stage, Miao Yi and Miao Ji were still quietly looking at each other. Facing Miao Yi's repeated provocations, Miao Ji didn't show any signs of anger. Miao Ji's expression was emotionless as her beautiful eyes looked at her face and her tone was indifferent. You think that I want to contract the ancient Gu King, right? Sacred Maiden's words made the elders' faces turn pale. Some of them who were holding things in their hands dropped onto the ground. What was the relationship between Sacred Maiden and this Sacred Maiden candidate? Why did they feel that? The atmosphere between them was so strange. In the face of the Saintess candidate's repeated provocations and obvious hostility, Sacred Maiden didn't show any signs of anger. Instead, that pair of calm, beautiful eyes revealed a trace of helplessness. Helplessness. Did they see wrongly? The Saintess actually felt helpless? The elders were shocked, but the two people who were being watched did not care about it. Miao Yi's eyes dimmed slightly as though there were some raging waves rolling in her eyes. She stared at Miao Ji, pursed her lips and suddenly said, You were the one who suggested the last hurdle, the hurdle of nurturing the Gu worm from tonight to tomorrow, right? Miao Ji didn't say anything. Miao Yi clenched her fists and continued to ask, Just now, the questions they asked me and the 10 questions were also your idea, right? Miao Ji raised her eyebrows. Her lips curled into a smile as she said, You're quite observant. This was also a tacit agreement. Miao Yi's fingers curled into a fist. The emotion in his eyes surged even more violently. It was as if in the next instant, it would surge out and destroy everything. Yes, she was indeed observant. It was as if he had noticed the interaction between Miao Zhilian and Miao Yang. She quickly came up with a countermeasure. Just like, after passing the first 3 rounds of the Saintess selection, she had seen all the letters that the waitress had handed to the judges. Then, during the Q&A session, the condition of proving his innocence was stated. Another maid handed him a letter. Miao Yi had never seen the holy maiden of the Miao tribe in her 10 years in the Miao tribe. But after all, she had grown up in the Miao tribe leader's family. Naturally, she knew that the only person who could order the elders around was the sacred maiden. The judges arranged the following hurdles and rules according to what was written on the letter. Chapter 2807. In the beginning, Miao Yi did not understand why the Saintess, who had never cared about worldly affairs, would intervene in the selection of the Saintess. Moreover, he had proposed such a difficult hurdle. After seeing Miao Ji, she finally understood. Because she, Miao Yi, was this year's holy maiden candidate. So Miao Ji came. The corners of Miao Yi's mouth twitched as a self-deprecating smile appeared in her beautiful eyes. Just say it. What do you want? Are you trying to force me to withdraw from the Saintess selection, or are you trying to force me to leave the Miao tribe? As she spoke, a trace of loneliness flashed across her eyes. She lowered her head and gave an almost inaudible self-deprecating laugh. I, Miao Yi, what virtue and ability do I have to actually make you, the Miao tribe's Saintess, personally come forward to deal with me? Miao Ji's hands tightened on the table. It's getting late. Don't waste other people's time. What exactly do you want? Just say it. Miao Yi's gaze landed on Miao Ji's tightly curled up hand. But soon it disappeared. Miao Ji remained silent for a long time. Miao Yi's frown deepened. The surrounding elders didn't dare to open their mouths to break the awkward atmosphere. Everyone could hear it. There must be a special relationship between Miao Ji and Miao Yi. There was complete silence on the selection platform. After a long time, impatience appeared on Miao Yi's face. She knitted her brows tightly, turned around and walked down the stage. As he walked, he cast his gaze towards Yiqing Luo. From Miao Yi's eyes, Yiqing Luo read her apologies. He seemed to be saying to her, I'm sorry to disappoint you. Did Miao Yi choose to give up the chance to become the holy maiden? Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased slightly as she looked at Miao Yi's slightly pale complexion, and then looked at Miao Ji, who had a forbearing expression. If Miao Yi gave up, the venomous worm in Mo Xian's body, what to do? However, looking at the atmosphere between Miao Yi and Miao Ji, if she really forced Miao Yi to continue participating in the later stages of the selection, to Miao Yi it was too cruel. What should she do? Perhaps it was because of Yiqing Luo's inner fear. Mo Xian sensed it. Suddenly, a large palm came at his waist. His warm palms were pressed tightly against her delicate body through her robe. The man's low and hoarse voice floated into her ears. Do you care that much that she's not the Holy Virgin? Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips as she looked up at him. The man's beautiful peach blossom eyes shone brightly. However, no matter how seductive she was, but it lacked the tenderness when he looked at her. He was too indifferent. It was almost as if he was looking at a stranger with indifference. Yiqing Luo raised her fair fingers and bit by bit, through the golden mask, she covered his eyes. Before his hand could move, the man's large palm had already quickly clasped her wrist. It was very powerful. It seemed to be preventing her from touching him. Yiqing Luo laughed softly. However, his laughter was filled with bitterness. Of course I care. If she wasn't the Saintess, who else could return you to me? Still. Mo Xian narrowed his peach blossom eyes as he listened to the young lady's bitter voice. His heart felt inexplicably irritated, especially when he saw the girl forcing herself to smile and her lifeless eyes. His irritability grew even more. His brows creased as his 5 fingers clasped the young lady's face. Whether she's the Saintess or not, what has it got to do with me? Moreover, isn't I right next to you? The man's strength was very powerful. Yiqing Luo was forced to meet his gaze. Chapter 2808. The young lady was smiling. There was also a faint smile in Gu Pan's charming eyes. The tone in her words was domineering and devilish. However, that ethereal voice faintly revealed an imperceptible hoarseness and bitterness. It made one's ears hurt, like thousands of fine needles, piercing fiercely into one's heart. It was the same for Mo Xian. His heart seemed to contract fiercely. It was unbearably tight. The slender fingers which were holding the wine cup unconsciously tightened. The wine in the cup started to ripple. The surrounding lively people also quietened down. Their gazes were complicated as they looked at the two who were hugging each other. They looked so lovey-dovey. But Yan Xiaoyi and the others who had been following beside them, witnessing their feelings, how could they not tell? Between the two of them, there was no longer the deep feelings in the past. That's right. If Miao Yi wasn't the sacred maiden, what should they do with the two types of goo worms in the overlord's body? The atmosphere suddenly became a little gloomy. So gloomy that Dmo Xian's heart was contracting and suffocating feeling became clearer. He frowned his brows under the mask. His thin lips pursed tightly. The hand which was holding the wine cup, put down heavily. Just as he was about to open his mouth, the young lady who was leaning in the man's arms, suddenly raised her head. A pair of warm and soft hands cupped Dmo Xian's face before he could even react. Dmo Xian frowned but didn't push the young lady's hands away. The young lady tilted her head, her gorgeous face surfaced a tenacious and unyielding smile. So, my dear overlord, I will definitely let your eyes completely only see me. Dmo Xian swallowed the words which were at the tip of his tongue. His quiet gaze met with Yiqing Luo's. Yiqing Luo's hand sent his face and immediately crashed into his arms. It's alright if you're not willing to be the sacred maiden, no matter who the sacred maiden is, it's alright. At most he would just use some tricks. When Miao Yi walked down the selection stage, her gaze was always on Yiqing Luo. And naturally, she saw the interaction between Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian. The environment she grew up in had given her keen senses. Miao Yi naturally saw through Yiqing Luo's momentary loss of composure earlier. Her feet suddenly felt as if they were being pressed down by a 1,000-pound boulder. She could not move her feet. If she couldn't become the Holy Maiden, she wouldn't be able to enter the Holy Maiden Pavilion, and she wouldn't be able to get rid of the love goo and the heart separation goo for Dizun. Qing Luo had done so many things for her. He protected her in everything. He also used his actions to show that he would become her backer. But this was how he repaid Qing Luo. She didn't even care about Qing Luo's extravagant request? She gave up on the Saintess selection. Qing Luo didn't stop her nor did she blame her. He didn't force her to return to the selection stage. Instead he respected her choice. He had never done anything for Qing Luo. This time was he going to disappoint Qing Luo again? Miao Yi's feet could no longer move. The two hands hanging by the side of his body clenched and clenched. It was as if he had gone through countless internal struggles. In the end, Miao Yi closed her eyes, clenched her fists, and turned around resolutely. She once again walked towards the direction of the selection stage, once again. Instantly the public square was in an uproar. Numerous people were paying attention to Miao Yi's actions. At this moment they didn't understand what Miao Yi was trying to do. Yiqing Luo took one look and saw through Miao Yi's thoughts. Chapter 2809. Miao Yi turned her head back and saw Yiqing Luo walking towards her. Her eyes were slightly red as her throat tightened. Qing Luo? I have no intention of forcing you to become the Saintess. Yiqing Luo raised her hand and gently placed it on Miao Yi's shoulder, so you don't have to suffer yourself. Miao Yi's lips trembled and her voice was hoarse. The Overlord, no matter if you're the sacred maiden or not, I won't let anything happen to Xian. This isn't something you should consider. Yiqing Luo interrupted her words. You becoming the sacred maiden is just a little more convenient. But. Miao Yi's voice was getting hotter and hotter. Yiqing Luo's lips curled into a smile as she patted her shoulder. No buts. I don't know what happened between you and the Miao tribe's holy maiden. If you don't want to be the holy maiden, if you don't want to have anything to do with her, then don't be the holy maiden. Miao Yi's long eyelashes fluttered. Faintly, it was mixed with traces of sparkling and translucent crystals. Yiqing Luo smiled even more warmly as she raised her hand and rubbed her head. If you have nowhere to go, there's still my place. The World Mercenary Group needs a Miaogu genius. Yiqing Luo's voice wasn't soft at all. His words were clearly transmitted to the elders on the selection platform. The elders panicked. Miss Yi, this won't do. This is our Miao tribe's genius. You can't take it away. Yiqing Luo's brows rose as she squinted at that elder with a smile which didn't look like a smile. Now it's not me who wants to bring Yi away, but your Miao tribe cannot tolerate Yi. Her voice was calm and a little cold. It was hard to tell what she was feeling. The elder was rendered speechless, unable to retort at all. He anxiously looked at the elders beside him, then at Miao Ji. It had been a long time since a Miaogu genius had appeared in their Miao tribe. It wasn't easy for a genius to be born. How could they bear to let her go? How could they bear to let her join a mercenary group with her talent? However, the Saintess refused to budge. They didn't know what to say to make Miao Yi stay. Yi, let's go. Seeing that the elders had all quietened down, Yiqing Luo gave a cold laugh as she grabbed Miao Yi's arm and walked towards the direction of the seating area. The elders wanted to chase after him to stop him, but he had no stance to take. He watched helplessly as Yiqing Luo dragged Miao Yi away. Miao Yi was held for a few steps and her footsteps paused. "No way, Qing Luo, I cannot give up." Yiqing Luo also stopped in her tracks and turned back to look at her. Miao Yi lowered her eyes, pursed her lips and said in a hoarse voice, "I can't just leave like this." "Why?" Yiqing Luo released her hand and asked softly. Miao Yi's eyelashes fluttered. "There are many reasons. I've never done anything for you, but you have always encouraged me, taught me to grow and helped me a lot. I can't ignore the poison in His Majesty's body." "Who said you haven't done anything for me?" Yiqing Luo bent her finger and flicked it hard on Miao Yi's forehead. "That time when Miao Rongrong father and daughter duo planted the gu on Xian, if it wasn't for your timely arrival, the first person Xian saw when he opened his eyes would absolutely not be me." She curled her lips and her eyes shot towards Dmo Xian's direction. "After that, he will become estranged from me, and because of the love gu, he will fall in love with another woman." Chapter 28:10. Yiqing Luo looked at Miao Yi's unable to refute expression as she solemnly patted her shoulder. "So the reason why Xian was still able to allow me to get close to him when he was poisoned by the centrifugal gu is all because of you." Miao Yi was speechless. What he said made so much sense that she almost believed him. The two of them lowered their voices and spoke very softly. No one could hear what they were saying. They could only see Yiqing Luo patting Miao Yi's shoulder while saying something. Miao Yi's expression was very subtle, as though he was moved by Yiqing Luo's words. The judging elder who was the closest thought that Miao Yi had agreed to join the world mercenary group and could no longer hold it in as he took a big step forward. "No way, no way. Miss Miao, this Miao Gu genius, this elder will definitely not let her go." As he spoke, he reached out and grabbed Miao Yi's arm. His white beard fluttered in the wind. "Miss Yi, no matter what, Miss Miao is a member of our Miao tribe. Even if she was not the holy maiden, she was the future leader of the Miao tribe. You can't take her away, you can't." With that, the judging elder pulled Miao Yi behind him. Miao Yi was still confused. Yiqing Luo's lips curled as she smiled lightly. "If she's not willing, I naturally won't bring her away. But..." She paused for a moment and glanced in Miao Yi's direction. She was still laughing, but there was a hint of warning in her laughter. "If he wants to leave, no one can stop me." The judging elder's face stiffened and he pulled Miao Yi back a few steps. Then he turned around and tried to persuade her. "Miss Miao, do you really want to give up everything in the Miao tribe, the place where you grew up freely, and leave your hometown? There's no need for this kind of place to grow up," Yiqing Luo said coldly. The judging elder was once again rendered speechless. The other elders of the Miao tribe also lowered their heads. They had no way to refute Yiqing Luo's words. Miao Yi's days in the Miao tribe were indeed not any days worth reminiscing. The elders were also very clear about this. After Miao Yi escaped from the Miao tribe, because of the ancient Gu king, the Miao tribe hunted him down in all sorts of ways. They even massacred an entire village for it. If they were in his shoes, they would not have a good impression of the Miao tribe either. Even if Miao Yi gave up on the Miao tribe, that was a very normal choice. All the elders lowered their heads in silence. Even the judging elder who was grabbing Miao Yi's wrist unconsciously loosened his grip in guilt. Miao Yi took a few steps back and covered her wrist. Yiqing Luo's brows rose as she smiled at her. "Yi, do you want to leave the Miao tribe with me or to prove your hard work and ability to fight for the position of sacred maiden?" Miao Yi was still stunned. Yiqing Luo didn't rush him. The square fell into silence once again. About the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn. The silent Miao Yi's eyelashes fluttered again, and a trace of spirit returned. She slowly fixed the focal length onto Yiqing Luo. His eyes shone with an extremely bright light. Obviously he had made up his mind. Miao Yi said. When she spat out a word, a woman's steady and dignified voice floated from behind, instantly suppressing the entire atmosphere. "When did I say that I'm going to force you to leave the Miao tribe, and not allow you to take part in the sacred maiden selection?" It was Miao Ji. Chapter 28:11. The elders' gazes swiftly turned towards Miao Ji. Their eyes were filled with joy. Sacred Maiden had finally spoken out. Sacred Maiden had finally spoken out to retain eldest young Miss Miao. The judging elder was the first to jump out. Right. Sacred Maiden had never said anything about forcing eldest young Miss Meow to leave the Meow tribe. Miss Yi, you'd better return eldest young Miss Meow to our Meow tribe. Saying that, he grabbed Meow Yi's wrist and hurriedly pulled her back onto the selection stage. Meow Yi. She really didn't know since when did she become so popular. Standing on the selection stage again, she faced Meow Yi once again. Meow Yi's feelings were somewhat complicated. Her brows creased as she stared at Meow Yi's expressionless face for some time. The two of them didn't speak to break the silence. Meow Yi's brows creased even tighter as she turned her gaze towards Yiqing Luo, who was below the selection stage. But she saw that Yiqing Luo had already turned around and returned to Dmo Xian's side. Noticing her delivery of the gaze, Yiqing Luo raised her eyes as she gave her a mischievous smile. Meow Yi's pupils quivered. She instantly understood. Actually, Yiqing Luo had long seen through her unwillingness. She saw that she wanted to prove her own strength. She saw that she wasn't willing to give up the Sacred Maiden's position. Yiqing Luo specially walked out, not because she really wanted to bring her away from the Meow tribe, but she was telling her to choose a path that she really wanted to walk on. Meow Yi's eyes turned red once again. Her eyelashes were wet. The warmth in her heart was like a great courage encouraging her. Meow Yi's eyes gradually became resolute. There was no longer a hint of confusion or compromise. Sacred Maiden. She opened her mouth again, her voice was as calm as water, neither fast nor slow. I'm sorry for misunderstanding you. Meow Yi, who had been calm all this while, immediately froze when she heard these words. Meow Yi's hand froze on the table. Her eyes stared at Meow Yi without blinking, as though she couldn't believe that Meow Yi would actually apologize to her. I'm sorry. Perhaps I've misunderstood you too deeply, so whenever you appear I feel like you're targeting me. Meow Yi's next sentence extinguished the fire in Meow Yi's heart. The light in Meow Yi's eyes gradually dimmed. Meow Yi's tone was still calm. Since the Holy Maiden does not intend to use her power for personal gain, then, what is the deeper meaning behind the Holy Maiden selection ceremony? Meow Yi's eyes flickered dimly. The elders began to feel uneasy again. They really couldn't understand the complicated relationship between the Saintess and the Saintess candidate. Why was it so tense? The Saintess did not speak. The Saintess candidate did not say anything. They didn't know what to say. Could it be that he had to quietly wait for the strange atmosphere between the two of them to subside? Even if they could wait, the guests participating in the Saintess selection ceremony would not wait. His heart was filled with apprehension. Meow Yi finally opened her mouth. I'm here to meet the future Sacred Maiden of Meow tribe so that I can ascend to the upper realm without worry. She paused for a long time before saying the last 5 words. Meow Yi's gaze also had some changes. After floating for a moment, everything returned to calmness. In her eyes there was a trace of ridicule. Chapter 28:12. Whether you go to the upper realm or not, it has nothing to do with me. Meow Yi interrupted Meow Yi's explanation. Since you want to see the future Holy Maiden of the Meow tribe, now that you have seen her, can you leave? Meow Yi suddenly stood up, her eyes were filled with hurt and helplessness. I don't have much time left, why do you keep me at a distance? Meow Yi clenched her fists, her slender fingers turned white. But she still said, it doesn't matter. Meow Yi looked at Meow Yi's expressionless face and slowly sat back on the wooden chair. She let out a long sigh and closed her eyes weakly. She said word by word, since you said that I am making things difficult for you, well, you just have to answer my last question. You will be the only Holy Maiden candidate in the selection of the Holy Maiden. The elders held their breaths. The last question of the Holy Maiden? The way to contract the ancient Gu King? This question, even if it was the Saintess herself, she would not be able to answer it. The Holy Maiden seemed to treat Meow Yi like an elder looking at a junior. Shouldn't she support Meow Yi to become the Holy Maiden? How could she use this question to block Meow Yi's way? Just when the elders were in a dilemma. Meow Yi looked at Meow Xuanhuan and Meow Zhilian. Or you two can answer? We don't know. The 2 Holy Maiden candidates trembled and shook their heads. They had heard about the existence of the ancient Gu King through hearsay. They were wondering if there was an ancient Gu King in the Meow tribe. How could they know the way to contract the ancient Gu King? Meow Yi raised her eyebrows. That means you don't want to enter the last round? Meow Xuanhuan and Meow Zhilian were speechless. That was what they thought. Meow Yi had extinguished all their hopes. Meow Yi saw that they did not speak, so she looked at Meow Yi again. There was a strange light in her eyes. What about you? Do you want to enter the last round? Miao Yi frowned. She said one word. She bit her lower lip. The expression on his face was dark and gloomy. Miao Ji didn't give her time to think. She straightened up slightly and said, "What? Is this a difficult question to answer?" When Miao Ji said this, his eyes were fixed on Miao Yi's expression. He did not want to miss the slightest change in Miao Yi's expression. "If you want to, then answer the question I just asked. If you can answer, you pass. If you can't, you'll be eliminated." She continued, "It's just a matter of whether you can answer it or not." Miao Yi clenched her fists and suddenly laughed softly. "Yeah, it's just two choices." After laughing, Miao Yi raised her head, and the corners of her mouth curled into a mocking smile. Then he slowly said word by word, "There's only one way to form a contract with the ancient Gu King. You have to get the ancient Gu King's recognition, withstand the Gu poison of the ancient Gu King entering your body, and let the ancient Gu King suck your blood to form a contract." The crowd was in an uproar. Was this how the ancient Gu King contracted? It sounded like the contract was very simple. Of course, the people of the Miao tribe knew it very well. If the contract method was used on ordinary Gu poison. Chapter 28:13. But if the contracted partner was the ancient venomous worm king, it was simply impossible. The ancient venomous worm king was the king of the venomous worms that had existed since ancient times. To obtain the recognition of the ancient venomous worm king, it was simply a fantasy. Moreover, the ancient venomous worm king was able to become the leader of the venomous worms was because the ancient venomous worm king's own toxicity could instantly kill all the venomous worms in the world. Such toxicity, no one's body could withstand it. Not to mention letting the ancient venomous worm king suck their own blood essence. So who could prove? Was Miao Yi's reply true or false? All right. Just as the crowd was discussing, Miao Ji spat out a word. She slowly stood up and looked at Miao Yi's stubborn and elegant face as a gratified smile surfaced on her face. "Miao Yi, congratulations on becoming the last sacred maiden candidate." The elders had just finished Miao Ji's words. They clapped excitedly. The Miao tribesmen were in an uproar. Some were happy for Miao Yi. Some doubted Miao Yi. The entire public square became extremely lively at this moment. All sorts of discussions were incessant. Nestled in Dmo Xian's arms, Yiqing Luo, who was thinking of ways to take advantage of a man, squinted her eyes as she looked at everything in front of her. It could be said that it was within her expectations. Her feeling was right. This Miao tribe's sacred maiden indeed had complicated feelings towards Miao Yi. If she didn't guess wrongly, the relationship between these two was definitely not simple. Moreover, a long time ago their relationship was absolutely very close. Miao Ji's appearance, as well as the questions she raised. It looked as though she was making things difficult for Miao Yi. It looked as though she was forcing Miao Yi. It looked as though she was making things difficult for Miao Yi. But in actual fact, she was paving the way for Miao Yi. When Miao Yi escaped from the Miao tribe, she brought the ancient venomous worm king away. This matter was not a secret among the Miao tribe's upper echelons. If Miao Yi intentionally hid it, it would make those tribesmen feel that Miao Yi had ulterior motives towards the Miao tribe. He might as well bring this matter up in the open. Moreover, if the news of Miao Yi and the ancient venomous worm king's contract was spread, it would only strengthen Miao Yi's position in the Miao tribe. Miao tribe leader, Miao tribe holy maiden. These two positions were unshakable. "Why, aren't you excited to rush up the stage and drag your little sister away?" Dmo Xian looked down at the satisfied young lady in his arms. If it was a normal day, when they saw their own sisters being wronged or threatened, they would not be able to control themselves. Yiqing Luo had already rushed up and stood out bravely. At this moment she was actually nestled in his arms obediently. That was strange. "I'm not blind." Yiqing Luo rolled her eyes at him and her little hand was on his firm abs as she pinched it fiercely. "I can tell that sacred maiden is doing this for Yi's own good." As she spoke, she restlessly adjusted her position in his arms. Her hands exerted more force on his waist, moving up and down. The sacred maiden must be trying to stabilize Yi's position in the Miao tribe before she ascends to the upper realm. She intends to hand over everything in the Miao tribe to Yi alone. Dmo Xian narrowed his peach blossom eyes as a dangerous emotion started to spread beneath his eyes. His palms suddenly flipped over as he fiercely clasped the soft little hand that was caressing around his waist. The young lady's soft skin felt warm and soft to the touch. His eyes started to darken. Chapter 28:14. I'm not interested in the Miao tribe's matter. The man's hoarse voice was melodious and filled with magnetism, seducing her tightly. You're so restless and trying to seduce me. Are you so impatient that you want me to sleep with you? His fingers were slightly calloused and the touch on her face was extremely gentle. Yiqing Luo's face revealed a trace of satisfaction, like a cat's expression. The breath she breathed out was scorching hot and tempting. Her pink lips parted slightly as she laughed softly. Just a few touches and the Overlord reacted? Is the Overlord craving for me too much or is it too easy to react? Perhaps it was the man's fingertips that caressed her so comfortably. When the young lady spoke, there was a trace of satisfaction in her murmur. The ending sound rose up, extremely devilish. Like a seductive little hook. Bit by bit, it hooked a certain part of her heart. Dmo Xian's pupils suddenly contracted. Suddenly, a hand that was gently caressing her face pinched her chin. The man bent down and got closer to her. But he didn't kiss her. Just that the close distance was filled with danger. His hoarse voice warned, Yiqing Luo, don't try to provoke me. Dmo Xian's 5 fingers were a little strong. So strong that her chin felt a little painful. Yiqing Luo frowned as she endured the pain on her chin and forcefully pulled out an evil smile, her charming eyes curved. Overlord, are you angry because I've hit the mark? Dmo Xian's eyes were still flickering as he stared at Yiqing Luo's face without blinking. After some time he loosened his 5 fingers. He also shifted his line of sight away. He just sat on the soft cushion, his long legs half bent as his deep and gloomy eyes stared ahead. As though he didn't want to say another word to Yiqing Luo. Such an attitude made Yiqing Luo's mood improve greatly. He didn't deny it. That proved that she had indeed hit the mark on his thoughts. Under the condition of being poisoned by the centrifugal worm. He could still have such a strong reaction towards her. It was enough to prove how important she was in Dmo Xian's heart. Even if it was the centrifugal worm. It would absolutely not be able to separate their hearts. No matter what the Miao tribesman thought. The saintess had personally spoken. He personally confirmed that Miao Yi's answer was completely correct. The last candidate to become the holy maiden was Miao Yi. Tomorrow he would go to the ancient Gu King's land to carry out the Gu King's recognition ceremony. Soon after, about the time it took to drink a cup of tea. Today's selection ceremony was officially over. The crowd dispersed one after another. Miao Yi walked off the stage without looking back. The judging elder immediately caught up to her. Miss Miao, wait. The other elders also followed closely behind. Miao Yi was surrounded by a few elders. Perhaps it was because her mood had been affected, but there was not a hint of a smile on her face. Miss Miao, tomorrow is the recognition ceremony of the King of Venomous Worms. When will you? The 4th elder stammered, as if he was choosing his words carefully. The other elders also looked at Miao Yi with hopeful expressions. They all knew. Back then, Miao Yi had taken the ancient Gu King and escaped from the Miao tribe. Now Miao Yi had returned to the Miao tribe. She had never explained anything about the ancient Gu King from the beginning to the end. The ancient Gu King was the lifeline of the Miao tribe. What did Miao Yi do when she brought the ancient Gu King away? Was the ancient Gu King still with Miao Yi? Chapter 28:15. Yi. A calm and dignified voice rang out. The white-robed elder who had been standing beside Miao Ji stroked his white beard and walked out. As soon as the old man spoke, the surrounding elders quietened down. All of them stood up straight. His brows were filled with respect. The white-robed elder smiled kindly and said, "The recognition ceremony of the ancient Gu King will be held tomorrow. Send the ancient Gu King back to the place of the King of Venomous Worms and we'll talk about it after the ceremony. What do you think?" His tone was also very gentle. He did not force Miao Yi to hand over the ancient Gu King. Miao Yi looked up at the white-robed elder and chuckled. "Are you afraid that I won't return the ancient Gu King to the Miao tribe?" The white-robed elder, who was the great elder of the Miao tribe, smiled like a Maitreya Buddha and said, "Yi, what are you talking about? You are the future leader of the Miao tribe and the only candidate for the saintess. Everything in the Miao tribe will be yours, including the ancient Gu King. If that's the case, you don't have to ask any more questions." Miao Yi did not give face to the great elder and rejected him directly. "The ancient Gu King is with me. I will invite him out tomorrow." After saying that, he pushed aside the elders surrounding him and walked down the selection stage. The few elders were stunned on the spot. The 4th elder looked displeased and said, "Isn't Miss Miao too arrogant? She seems to be hostile towards us." The 5th elder frowned and said worriedly, If Miss Meow refuses to accept us, it will not be good for the future of the Meow tribe. The other elders looked at each other and lowered their heads in silence. Give her some time and she will believe in your loyalty to the Meow tribe. Miao Ji sighed as she watched Miao Yi leave. She stood up and a hint of melancholy appeared on her gentle face. Rest assured, Lady Holy Maiden, we will definitely assist young Miss Meow. Seeing the Holy Maiden speak, the elders immediately raised their hands and placed them on their shoulders in salute. Miao Ji smiled and said, "Yi is too stubborn. When I ascend to the upper realm in the future, I will have to ask you to take good care of Yi." Miao Ji's words were also indirectly telling the elders. Miao Yi indeed had a close relationship with her. And she indeed supported Miao Yi. The few elders hurriedly lowered their heads and responded in unison. Miao Ji thanked him and walked down the stage. Great Elder Miao immediately followed closely behind. Miao Ji stopped in her tracks and raised her hand to stop Great Elder Miao from following her. She said calmly, "This saintess still has matters to attend to." Great Elder Miao froze for a moment before stopping in his tracks. Miao Ji continued walking forward. The direction she was heading towards was not the way back. Instead, in the seats, the first row on the right. Miao Ji walked at a steady pace. He had barely taken a few steps when he was surrounded by a few people dressed in luxurious clothes. Standing at the very front was the pitiful Miao Zhilian, who was crying like a pear blossom in the rain. The people behind him were Miao Zhilian's parents and elders. "Saintess, please?" Miao Zhilian's sobbing voice sounded aggrieved. However, Miao Zhilian did not have time to finish her words. Miao Ji glanced at her indifferently. Her gaze was very indifferent. It was just a glance, but Miao Zhilian's tears welled up in her eyes and could not fall. This saintess hates people who don't keep their promises. Since you agreed to the bet, then bear the consequences yourself. Chapter 28:16. Miao Zhilian's face was ashen as she laid limply on the ground. She covered her face as tears gushed out. She heard her mother's grumbling voice, "I told you, Sacred Maiden, and that slut's relationship is not ordinary, so what's the use of begging, Sacred Maiden? Our family's face has been thrown away by you. Cry, 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 you only know how to cry. What's the use of raising you up and nurturing you so painstakingly? You don't have any foresight at all." Her father berated her furiously. Miao Zhilian felt her ears buzzing as her eyes turned black. Under this endless criticism and grumbling, she fainted. At the same time, Yiqing Luo frowned slightly as she looked at Miao Yi, who was walking towards the Sacred Maiden's candidate room. She could tell that Miao Yi was feeling down. She stood up and chased after her. An arm stretched out. It directly pulled her into his embrace. The man's elegant sandalwood scent entered her nostrils. History was always shockingly similar. Yiqing Luo had learned her lesson this time as she conserved her energy and didn't struggle. "I'm only going over to take a look at her. When her emotions have stabilized, I'll be back." The man didn't give any response after she finished her words. The hand which was on her waist didn't move at all. Yiqing Luo was helpless as she followed his hand and found a comfortable position in his arms. Then, "Overlord, will you go with me?" Dmo Xian still didn't reply. His long arm tightened around her waist. He lowered his head and planted his lips on her earlobe. His voice was low and husky, extremely sexy. "Have you forgotten something?" "Forgotten what?" Yiqing Luo blinked her eyes blankly. Above her head floated the man's low husky laughter. But this laughter, Yiqing Luo inexplicably sensed something. A dangerous aura. Yiqing Luo's petite body trembled as she instinctively sensed danger and wanted to push the man away. But at the next moment, the man directly opened his mouth and bit her earlobe. Yiqing Luo moaned as her little hand gripped the man's robe tightly. "You. What are you doing?" Yiqing Luo's face was instantly dyed red. She really wanted to break free from the man's restraint. This restraint seemed to have a bad taste as it tempted her. Especially when the man bit her earlobe. She was unable to control the numbness that she felt, as if she had been electrocuted. Her mind went blank for a moment. He felt as if all the energy in his body had been sucked dry. His heart was thumping, beating faster and faster. It was as if he couldn't control it at all. Before the ceremony, someone seemed to have promised this lord something? Dmo Xian grabbed the back of her head, preventing her from evading. His teeth were still biting on Yiqing Luo's earlobe. As he spoke, his warm breath constantly drilled into her ears. Yiqing Luo's petite body kept trembling. Her whole body was limp and her eyes were wet with tears. She was about to go crazy from the torture. Her head was spinning. What did I promise you? Do whatever I want with you, including sleeping with you. Dmo Xian's voice was low and he sounded very happy. The young lady's innocent and honest response made Dmo Xian's mood improve greatly. His big palm clasped Yiqing Luo's waist tightly as he let go of her ear and laughed. This lord has already done what I promised you. Next it's time to collect the repayment. Yiqing Luo struggled a little. We can talk about it later. This lord has no patience. Dmo Xian rejected decisively. Chapter 28:17. No. Dmo Xian still rejected. Yiqing Luo? Damn it, could they still have a pleasant conversation? After a moment of confrontation, Yiqing Luo was defeated. Then what do you want? Go back to the room, deal with you. Dmo Xian replied very decisively. Clearly these words sounded very normal. But when it came out from Dmo Xian's mouth, it inexplicably carried a kind of seductive, colorful meaning. Yiqing Luo clenched her teeth, stretched out her hand and pinched the man's tight waist. I lose to you. I'll go with you and let you deal with me, all right? Saying that, she twisted her little body and turned her head to the side in a muffled voice, expressing that she was extremely angry now. While she was angry, Yiqing Luo didn't forget to let Chi out. Then she gave Chi the instruction to accompany Miao Yi. Chi was such a small ball and looked adorable. It should make Miao Yi feel better. Dmo Xian squinted his peach blossom eyes, looking at Chi-Chi's lightning-fast figure. His voice was deep. I can't tell that this lord's woman is not a simple person. Yiqing Luo gloomily shook her head and snorted. It's good that you know so. Overlord, what you need to do is to hug my thigh and listen to me obediently. The young lady's voice was sullen and tsundere, which made Dmo Xian's gaze became gentler. He laughed hoarsely, his rosy lips were even more gorgeous. This suggestion is not bad, but let this lord try first to see if this thigh of yours is good enough. While speaking, he had already grabbed the young lady's waist and carried her in his arms. There were too many people watching the show. He loved to tease the young lady in his arms. And he didn't have the bad taste of letting others watch the show. Especially, he didn't want anyone to see the shy young lady. Dmo Xian carried Yiqing Luo and stood up. An anxious voice was heard from behind. Overlord, please hold on. It was accompanied by urgent footsteps. Dmo Xian pretended not to hear it as he walked forward. Yiqing Luo could tell that it was Miao Ji's voice. Thinking of Miao Yi, she tugged Dmo Xian's collar. It's sacred maiden, put me down. Dmo Xian pursed his lips, apparently displeased. However, he still stopped in his tracks. Miao Ji happened to catch up with them. She took a look at the young lady in Dmo Xian's arms and hung her head down awkwardly. Miss Yi, I have something to tell you. Do you have the time? Yes. No. Two voices spoke at the same time. Yiqing Luo glared at him furiously. Dmo Xian, stop fooling around. If the holy maiden is looking for me, she must have something important to do. Don't tell me this lord's matter is not important? Dmo Xian sneered. Miao Ji felt even more embarrassed. Looking at the way the overlord was hugging Yiqing Luo. He was looking at the atmosphere between the two of them. Miao Ji more or less understood that she had disturbed the overlord's good time. However, she didn't have any extra time to wait for the next chance to talk to Yiqing Luo. He thought of the way Miao Yi looked at him. Miao Ji took a deep breath and spoke again. Miss Yi, I'll only take up a little bit of your time. If the overlord is worried, you can come along too. Dmo Xian's eyes darkened as his thin lips moved slightly. Just as he was about to open his mouth, the young lady's eyes were sharp and her soft little hand directly covered Dmo Xian's mouth. The young lady's other hand encircled the man's neck as she leaned close to the man's ear. Chapter 28:18. Hearing the young lady's serious tone, Dmo Xian's brows rose slightly, especially after hearing the young lady's serious words. Unknowingly, a smile appeared in his eyes. Yiqing Luo leaned close to his ear and couldn't see his expression. But Miao Ji could see it clearly. She couldn't help but sigh in her heart. The overlord was like a madman, pampering a young lady named Yiqing Luo and pampering her dearly. From the looks of it now, it was indeed true. Everyone could see that. The relationship between the two of them was really good, without any fake feelings. When Yiqing Luo moved her little head away, she raised her head and looked at Dmo Xian solemnly. The man had already adjusted the emotions in his eyes. He looked noble and indifferent, like an ascetic young master. Diamo Xian pursed his thin lips as he raised his slender fingers and flicked fiercely on Yiqing Luo's forehead. His voice was deep as he said slowly, "All right. Yiqing Luo." Such a straightforward reply, why did it make her feel as though she had fallen into a wolf's pit? She felt that Diamo Xian had been rejecting her suggestions in various ways. Just to tempt her to say this sentence? No matter what. After hearing Diamo Xian finally nodding his head in agreement, Miao Ji couldn't wait any longer as she invited the both of them to Sacred Maiden's courtyard. Sacred Maiden's status in the Miao tribe was extremely high. Because of that, the place where she stayed was the best location in the entire Miao tribe. And she had her own courtyard, far away from the other tribesmen. Outside the Sacred Maiden's courtyard was a huge nursery. The things planted in the nursery made Yiqing Luo curious. Those seedlings weren't the usual emerald green, but a kind of almost blood red. It looked extremely horrifying. Miao Ji took a look at the nursery as her lips curled. These are the food for the goo worms, used to nurture adult goo worms. The three of them walked past the nursery and entered the courtyard. It was another huge, lush garden like a forest. There was only one small path for people to pass through. On both sides of the small path, there were white hemp ropes which formed into a large net, blocking everything tightly. Through the web-like hemp rope, Yiqing Luo could see that the lush garden was densely packed with thousands of worms, crawling and squirming. Be careful. Don't touch the insect webs on both sides. Miao Ji reminded them gently, without any airs of a saintess. I'm sorry for making you come to such a dangerous place. It's just that. I don't want a fourth person to know what I want to tell you. It's all right. Yiqing Luo's gaze swept past those wriggling various goo worms. It's not bad to come here to broaden my horizons. As Yiqing Luo was speaking, her eyes had been studying the worm web, on how it prevented those goo worms from crawling out. He did not pay attention to his feet for a moment. He stepped on a branch that had spread out from the worm web. Yiqing Luo staggered as she fell forward. No matter how fast her reaction was. Unfortunately, this small path was too narrow. She didn't have anything to hold on to, and she was even more worried that she would pull down the surrounding insect webs. He thought that he would fall to the ground. However, in the next instant, Yiqing Luo felt a tightness around her waist. Immediately, the scent of a man's sandalwood scent wafted over. She crashed into Diamo Xian's chest. The two of them stabilized their footsteps. Yiqing Luo heaved a sigh of relief as she raised her head and was just about to express her thanks. Chapter 28:19. Yiqing Luo's heart tightened as she speedily withdrew from Diamo Xian's embrace. "Ah Xian, what's wrong with you? Where do you feel uncomfortable?" Diamo Xian did not answer. He leaned against the insect web behind him, his body stiff and motionless. "Are you guys okay?" Miao Ji quickly turned around and walked over. When she saw Diamo Xian's back leaning against the insect web, she stretched out her hand, wanting to support him. These insect webs are made from medicinal herbs which are the nemesis of goo worms. They are very sturdy and won't be damaged by collisions. It doesn't matter even if someone touches these insect webs, as it won't cause any harm to the body. But Miao Ji's hand had yet to touch Diamo Xian. Diamo Xian had already braced his body and dodged to the side. He dodged. Diamo Xian's tall and sturdy body staggered and swayed. If it wasn't for Yiqing Luo's quick reflexes to support him, he would probably be unable to stand steadily. Sacred Maiden, this insect web, after touching it, is there really no effect? Yiqing Luo wrapped her arms around Diamo Xian's tall body, pulling him away from the insect web. Her expression was extremely ugly and her eyes were covered in frost. Miao Ji furrowed her brows and said with certainty, "I can confirm that I made these insect webs with my own hands. There's no mistake." After a pause, Miao Ji looked at the overlord, whose huge body was pressing on top of the young girl. A trace of doubt flashed in her eyes. "Unless the overlord is, where is the nearest room in the courtyard? Go there now. There seems to be something wrong with Ah Xian's body." Yiqing Luo interrupted Miao Ji's words as she placed all her attention on Diamo Xian. The man on top of her felt as if his body was on fire and extremely hot. His breathing was also very heavy. "Come with me." Miao Ji also knew that Diamo Xian wasn't willing to let anyone other than Yiqing Luo touch him, so she quickly led the way. Yiqing Luo supported the man, or more accurately, she carried the man. Diamo Xian's consciousness was obviously no longer conscious. His tall body and his strength were almost completely pressed down on her. Yiqing Luo knew that her strength was definitely not small. Casually grabbing a person's neck and lifting them up was also a very easy thing to do. but when he was carrying Dmo Xian, she only felt he was almost overwhelmed to the point of suffocation. She carried the man and followed Miao Ji for about the time it took for half an incense stick to burn. After passing through the garden filled with insect webs, there was a row of rooms on the right. Miao Ji asked Yiqing Luo to help Dmo Xian to lie on the bed. "Can you remove the overlord's mask?" Yiqing Luo's fingers tightened as she bent down and removed the mask from Dmo Xian's face. That peerless face was reflected in her eyes. However, this usually expressionless face was now filled with emotions. At this moment, his face was as pale as paper. His brows were tightly knitted together as if he was in great pain. Looking at the man's tightly knitted brows, Yiqing Luo's heart thumped. "Little Luo, the man on the bed called out subconsciously. His hoarse voice was filled with immense pain. Yiqing Luo's eyes turned sour when she heard that call. She squatted by the bed and reached out to hold the man's hand, pressing it against her cheek. "Xian, I'm here. Tell me if you're feeling unwell?" Yiqing Luo had yet to finish her words of consolation. Suddenly, her shoulder was pressed down by a palm. Miao Ji's solemn voice floated over her head. "Don't move, let me take a look." Chapter 28:20. Yiqing Luo was stunned as she quickly rolled up Dmo Xian's wide sleeves. The moment her gaze touched the man's wrist, Yiqing Luo's throat tightened as her pupils unconsciously enlarged. She saw. On the man's wrist there was a red line like a blood thread, extending from his palm to his wrist. On one look, it was as though Dmo Xian's hand had split open with a cut. It was extremely ghastly. Yiqing Luo could clearly see that the line of blood was still spreading towards his arm, although the speed was very slow. But Yiqing Luo could determine that this line of blood would spread to his shoulder in less than a jaw stick's time. What is this? Yiqing Luo glanced sideways as she looked at Miao Ji. Indeed, I guessed correctly. Miao Ji's eyes sunk when she saw that red line. There are goo worms in Dmo Xian's body and it's an extremely insidious poison, right? It wasn't a big deal for a normal person to touch the worm web. But Dmo Xian had the love and centrifugal worm in his body. At the moment when he touched the worm web, the medicinal effect of the goo worm's nemesis flowed through the skin and into Dmo Xian's body. The love and centrifugal worm would be stimulated by this medicinal effect at the same time. Hearing Miao Ji's explanation, Yiqing Luo's heart tightened. Then is there any way to alleviate it? I'll light a stock of tranquilizer to temporarily let the goo worms in Dmo Xian's body settle down first. Miao Ji took out an incense burner from the side and placed it by the bedside. Yiqing Luo took a look. There was a square-shaped incense block and the smell was very strange. She took a look at Miao Ji. Although she was sure that Miao Ji cared about Miao Yi a lot, and would not have any ill intentions towards her and Dmo Xian. But after all, regarding the art of goo worms, it was something she wasn't good at, so she couldn't fully trust it. Yiqing Luo asked Old Man Song in her consciousness. "Alas, you're really reckless. Knowing that Dmo Xian's body was implanted with love and centrifugal worm, you still let him come to this place full of goo worms." After Old Man Song was awakened by Yiqing Luo, he sensed the surrounding atmosphere and couldn't help but mumbled a few words. Old Man Song's consciousness swept towards the direction of the goo worm incense. That is an ordinary incense. It can be used to suppress the goo worms in Dmo Xian's body. He watched as Miao Ji lit the incense and placed it beside the bed. Yiqing Luo was just about to ask about Dmo Xian's situation. Miao Ji's gaze was fixed on her. "There's a soul searching for Ngongxiang. It's you? Whose soul do you carry with you?" As soon as she said that, she quickly retracted her gaze and realized something. She smiled apologetically and said, "Sorry, I shouldn't have asked that." She lowered her eyes and her face was as gentle as water. "You and I have just met, and the person who has been poisoned is a venerable sovereign. It's reasonable for you to be wary of me." Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes as she silently tried to guess the meaning behind Miao Ji's words. Why could Miao Ji sense Old Man Song's existence? Goo worms don't necessarily have to be used to control people. There are also goo worms that specialize in controlling souls. There is a soul goo here that can sense my presence. Old Man Song was also shocked. The saintess of the Miao Gu clan is indeed an existence that can ascend to the upper realm. She even knows how to nurture things like soul goo. Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips as her eyes fixed on Miao Ji. Chapter 28-21. I know you want to talk to me about Yi. Yiqing Luo retracted her gaze from Miao Ji and looked back at the man lying on the bed as her voice was very soft. Your relationship with Yi, if I didn't guess wrongly, even if you're not mother and daughter, but you were once as close as mother and daughter. As Yiqing Luo said that, she stretched out her hand again and held Dmo Xian's scorching hot palm. After the incense was ignited, Dmo Xian's tightly knitted brows eased slightly. Only, the man's temperature was unable to cool down for a long time. She hoped that Dmo Xian could feel that she was by his side, using her willpower to withstand the stimulation of the love and centrifugal worm. Am I very obvious? Miao Ji gave a bitter smile behind her. Yi's attitude towards me is so cold, how can you still tell our relationship? Yiqing Luo didn't look at her as her voice was slightly gloomy. The onlooker sees the game more clearly. I can tell that Yi isn't cold towards you, but she can't accept you appearing as the sacred lady. Miao Ji was stunned as though her thoughts were exposed as she lowered her eyelids. After some time, she sighed softly as a sliver of melancholy and uneasiness flashed in her eyes. Miss Yi, putting aside the sacred lady's identity, can I ask you for a favor as a senior? Yiqing Luo looked at her sideways. Miao Ji's lips moved. Yi trusts you very much, I hope. You can help me to restore the relationship between me and Yi. I don't want to leave Nirvana realm with any regrets. Seeing Miao Yi return to the Miao tribe and shed away the immaturity and naivety from before, she had become able to take charge. Miao Ji's heart was gratified and excited, but also melancholy and helpless. Melancholy, she had never participated in Miao Yi's changes. But she was unable to participate in Miao Yi's changes. Restore the relationship? Yiqing Luo found it funny as she raised her brows. Yi obviously doesn't hold any hope towards you. Since you're about to leave Nirvana realm, why do you need to give her unnecessary hope before you leave and increase her sadness? I know. I let her down in the past, but I'm Yi's only family in this world. I don't want her to feel that she has no one to worry about in this world other than the two of you. Miao Ji's eyes were complicated. Moreover, Yi has become the Miao tribe's holy maiden. 50 years later, she will be able to ascend to the upper realm. I will be waiting for her there. Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips and didn't reply immediately. Miao Ji's feelings for Miao Yi did not seem fake. Moreover, Miao Ji was right. Except for the dying Miao Yixiong, Miao Ji was Miao Yi's only family. Miao Yi indeed had a deep grudge against Miao Ji. However, if he really didn't care about Miao Ji, why would he pay attention to her attitude? Pay attention to Miao Ji's emotions. Furthermore, because of Miao Ji, he even attempted to give up on the Saintess selection. If he really didn't care, that way his emotions wouldn't be affected. If you can help me and calm me down so that we can meet and talk about the venomous insect poison in Dizun's body, I can help. Miao Ji saw that Yiqing Luo wasn't speaking for a long time and her hands were tightly clasped together, as her voice sounded a little bitter. Apparently, she didn't want to use this kind of transaction method to beg Yiqing Luo for help. But she had no other choice. You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.